He was always the best player on the court in basketball.
He was the most outstanding shooter that I've seen in the game today.
Rich had the best vertical jump by far.
Rich was the type of ball player that could come across half court and shoot a jump shot, nothing but net.
He comes in for a layup and his shoelaces flashed across my eyes.
He delivered the goods year in and year out, time after time after time.
It was a joyful thing to see Rich play.
He was playing basketball with older kids when he was very young.
We kind of tested him right away early, and then we went out behind the elementary school and played tackle Red Rover. He stood up to us just fine.
I was playing with guys 14 when I was 8 or 9, and when I was 11, I was playing with 18-year-old guys.
It was obvious at that point. He came up as a freshman, he's playing on the varsity. I mean, everybody knew what was going on.
A lot of people think because you're short or small that you've got a disadvantage. If you're good and you're strong, you can do probably more than a big, because they can't, the center of gravity is too high. They can't stay with you.
He played against taller guys his whole career, so I never heard him say anything about being bothered playing with taller guys.
He's a classic example of, yes, he knew he wasn't going to be as tall as a lot of people, but he would be stronger than everyone.
He was years and years and years ahead of his time lifting weights.
He was lifting weights when no one was lifting weights. He was interested in sort of physical culture and developing himself years before other people were.
Right here I lifted weights. I had a bar and cement, and I lifted them and lifted them and lifted them. I gained like 25 pounds from my freshman to sophomore year. And there was no steroids or any of that junk. It was peanut butter and some steak and chocolate milk and just a lot of hard work.
He was 5'7" and weighed about 160 pounds when he was a senior in high school. And he could bench press over 300 pounds, and he was just extremely strong.
Rich was always aggressive about everything he did.
Till 11 or 12 at night, you know, bump, 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 bump. Rich would be out there shooting baskets.
When he was playing in the gym in basketball and taking his shots, he was never happy if the ball rattled and hit the rim a little bit. He wanted it to be all net. He wanted it to be right there.
After practice was over, then he'd say, "Coach, we got to shoot." And so he had a circle of where he likes to shoot his jump shots from. And he had to make 10 in a row from each spot, or we started all over again. And I was late for dinner many, many nights because I was there shooting baskets with him.
I was practicing all the time. I was doing it for fun. It was just fun. And I could never get enough of it.
I didn't put limits on myself. I saw that there were short guys that could jump, but not short as I was. But I don't know, I had a dream that I could go up and do that. And I think you have to have patience though as an athlete. You know, I couldn't do that immediately. I could touch the little loop on the net, and then I could touch the backboard, and then I could touch the brace, and then I could touch the rim. I wanted to be really good. I really wanted to be good.
And when I came out on the floor, I'm sure that people who came to see me thought, "That's the guy? He's, 5'7", Of course, when I jumped up and dunked it, it made a little difference.
And little as he was, you'd be surprised how high he got up in the air with the big fellows.
What he's got is probably the fastest first step that I've ever seen.
And it was just incredible how he could just take over a game at will.
What would take your breath away would be the size of him and the ability that he had of jumping and shooting. You wouldn't believe it.
I met Rich Jordan. He was the legend that you would tell stories about, and people that didn't know about him wouldn't believe the stories. They were just too far-fetched and no one believed them, but I knew they were true. I just heard that there was this little white kid at Jordanville High School that could play as well as anybody, and he was really exciting to watch, and that he could dunk a basketball at 5'7". When I do paintings, when I do art pieces, I try to collect items that bring memories back to me of when I played and people I saw play. So when we went to meet Rich Jordan, he had all the things I needed. He had items that he had from his playing days. So he had the game ball that he used when he scored 60 points down at the Battle Creek Central Fieldhouse. He had his letter sweater. He had newspaper clippings and his jersey. I wanted to do this painting because Rich was a person that was not from a big-time town. He was from a smaller town, but he was a big-time legend. He was a big-time name. And what a good example he is for kids today, that a small guy in a small town can work hard and do great things. And I just think that's a great story.
Jordanville was really a beautiful little town, and it's 5 miles from Lake Michigan. It's a lot of apples and the cherries and strawberries, and it's blueberries, and it's kind of a rural area.
The time period, when you look at the 60s, and that was the early 60s, you had a lot of changes beginning to take place. But Jordanville was still basically unchanged from what it was 20, 30 years before that. It was a typical small town.
The town closed down when we played. I mean, they could have come in and robbed everything because there was nothing open. When I was leaving school, they were lined up at the door 3 or 4 hours before. They had them lined up from the town all the way to, and when we broke through that paper, you know what you do, and the crowds were standing room only, people were underneath and it was really a lot of fun.
Rich's family, you couldn't meet better people.
It was a real syndrome of the only son in a family that cared about him a lot. And his father, Tuffy, spent a lot of time with Rich, and it was a very positive relationship.
My dad really instilled so much confidence in me. He just expected me to be able to do things. He was from Missouri, and he was a poor boy that had picked cotton when he was a kid, and he was very proud of it. He picked 500 pounds of cotton in one day at 11 and 12 years old. He would carry it. He made the baseball team. It's in the 6th grade, the varsity team in his school. He didn't go much further than that because he had to work, but he was a very good athlete, and he could do triples and dive, and he could do a lot of things. He was much better than me, I think, if he'd had the same opportunities.
When I was 9 years old, I thought I guess you would call it a hot dog. I got into a rundown all the time, and they'd throw the ball, and then I'd run to the next base. They'd throw it, I'd run to the next base, and I took advantage of their, inabilities at that point. Well, one time I got in a rundown, and they threw the ball, and I took off my helmet and caught the ball, and they called me out, and then I threw my dad saw that. That was all he needed. He came down out of his car, came and grabbed me by the back of my pants as I was kicking, and he carried me up to the car and put me in the car and told me if I ever acted like that again, I'd never play another sport, ever.
Tuffy was my second father. We'd sit down and talk about things, and Tuffy was there kind of as a stable force. He set certain boundaries that we adhered to only because we knew that this was a pretty important person in our life.
They were wonderfully supportive of all of Jordanville's athletics, and they knew that their son was the star, but they always encouraged all of the rest of the players to do their best and to try to improve.
They just treated me with the utmost respect and act like they loved me. His dad was my best friend, and whenever I'd see him somewhere, That was just that relationship.
My father, the first thing we did, of course, he put in a basketball court for me. And he did this himself. He laid the cement down himself, put it in. But this doesn't look very big, but we've had 6'8" guys on here, 6'9".
There was people over there all the time, and there were people over there playing basketball all the time. We played basketball all the time. Or in the winter, there was people over there playing electric football. And
the gathering point was Richie's house. We used to play wiffle ball over there. Always had a basketball game going on with music. It was a gathering point.
And we'd play basketball, and we'd have Kool-Aid and listen to records after school, and just got to be a real kind of a family.
They were so sociable, you know. It was just more or less, we went to Fenville, we went over to Rich Jordan's house.
We used to have some real good games.
In the 50s and 60s, when we were all growing up, being Jewish was more difficult. There was a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot.
I had a few anti-Semitic things over the years, but nothing like this particular night. I come into this place, and they got signs up. We're going to get you to night number 12, you Jew, and all this stuff. And I took the ball out of bounds, and the one lady pulled the hair on the back of my legs and spit on my shoulder and said, "We're going to get you, Jew." And I mean, I couldn't believe what was going on, and they weren't doing anything about it. The referee was like he didn't see it, he didn't hear it. And so I went home to my mother and I said, "Ma, they were calling me a Jew, Billy," because my dad was from the South, my mother's Jewish. She said, "What are you mad about? That's what you are."
He never tried to hide the fact that he was Jewish. You know, at that time, a lot of Jews did not wear their religion on their sleeve because of all the anti-Semitism. They would have a low profile, and he did.
Well, when I was in the 7th grade, I started going to Hebrew lessons because at 13, I wanted to have a bar mitzvah. And I get a record, it's called a Haftorah, that you have to sing at your bar mitzvah. These guys, my buddies, were learning it with me. Now, these guys were all Gentile, and they had it as good. You could hear them all, Baruch, Atah, I don't know. And they could all do this, they could all sing it.
His teammates learned his Haftorah, which is pretty incredible.
I first heard about Rich Jordan when I was in the 7th grade, and a coach happened to be my math teacher. And I will never forget him making the statement that right now in Fenville, Michigan, there's a kid in the 6th grade by the name of Richie Jordan who he thought could play on any varsity team in the state as a 6th grader. He was always pushing himself. Could I go a little higher, a little faster? And I had just never forgotten that. And I've always said and have written about that time and what he did. I even wrote a fairy tale about him called Court Royalty, which kind of summed up for me what Rich was all about. And I said in the conclusion of the written piece, he could really fly. And oh, how he could fly. And he could. We'd never seen anything quite like him.
Rich had a unique jump shot. He would jump and sort of fold his legs up and he shot with one hand. He was absolutely the purest shooter that I've ever seen.
His shot could not be taught. He just learned that. And, you know, everybody asked me, "Oh, yeah, I taught him to do that." Well, I didn't teach him how to do that.
if you're a basketball purist, there's certain things that are supposed to happen mechanically. His jump shot is effectively, arm-wise, about as pure mechanically as it gets. So it was always a pleasure to watch him shoot.
What I try to do is I try to reach up with my arm, let my wrist drop over, and boom, it's in. And The strength in my hands and arms and things made it easy, because I didn't use I only used one hand.
He was just an outstanding shooter. As I always tell him, I'd never remember seeing you miss. Every time he'd go up to shoot, it would always go in.
As an opponent, playing against someone like Richie, he made you play your best game. There's one play that stands out in my mind that I've remembered over 50 years. He came down, put the ball on the floor maybe 3 times, dribble, 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 and he went straight up in the face of a 6'2", good defender, and held the ball in one hand and cradled it and waited till the defender started to come down, and he just flicked his wrist. That shot was from right around here, from right about here. It's a long way.
Every time that he had the ball and you thought it's going to go in, and it could be 10-footers, it could be 18-footers, it could be 28-footers. Anytime the ball's in his hands and you think it's going up, it's going in.
It would be amazing to find out, and it's impossible to do so, but how many points that he might have scored had they had the three-point line. Because I can remember one time his senior year, there were several college scouts at a game at Hopkins, and he missed his first couple 3 shots. And then he made 15 in a row from the middle of the second quarter till halftime. And every one of those would have been 3-point shots. Instead of having 30 points at halftime, he would have had 45 points at halftime.
Some people would have thought that Rich was arrogant. But where do you separate arrogance or confidence? I mean, he knew he was good.
Even in warm-ups, you saw something in his demeanor that this guy just has that certain thing. He wasn't your average high school player.
Richie was focused. He was already thinking about what he wanted to do, how he was going to do it. He was in game mode right from the get-go.
His demeanor never changed. And didn't pout, didn't, be disgusted or anything. Just come back down and shoot it the same way.
He had no real outward signs of emotion. He could miss 3 shots, he could make 5 in a row. You would never know it.
I've probably talked to 100 people over my lifetime who said, geez, that guy must have been a real ball hog to score 44 points. He was anything but a ball hog. The thing with our team is everybody knew what they were supposed to do, and everybody did what they were supposed to do.
If you'd watched us play, the ball moved around a lot of fast breaks, and all of us had some pretty good speed. We all got our hands on the ball at various times. It wasn't kind of just feed Rich and let him shoot.
Because you don't do these things by yourself, And if a person was open, they got the ball from me.
It would be a pleasure to play with somebody like Rich because he'd dish it off to you, and you just had to be smart enough to be in the right place and you'd get an easy basket.
It was never all about me. It was, let's win this game as a team.
Well, the first time I met Rich, I was just a young boy, and from that very beginning, it was evident that Richie Jordan had some incredibly God-gifted talent. I was a combat medic in Vietnam. I received the Medal of Honor. On May the 13th, 1969, we were to go into Tam Key and be a blocking force for a track unit that was going to come over the hill. They're firing at us, we get 2 helicopters shot down. Well, I noticed one guy lagging behind, so once he went down, I jumped up, automatic. I mean, that's my job, right? I was taught from a very young age, if you're given a job, you don't do it halfway. If you're given a job, you do the best you can do, and you do it until the end. That's kind of the way I feel about Richie Jordan, Yes, I've told people in the military, I told people in Vietnam, you won't believe this guy that I grew up with. You will not believe that a young man at a high school age and 5'7.5" could do what this man did in his high school career.
We were supposed to play them the home game. They were supposed to come to Fenville. But the Kalamazoo people were so excited about our team and myself making these points that they suggested that we played in the Kalamazoo, Western Michigan field house.
I can remember the bus ride over, and we were excited because I'd been in Reed Fieldhouse a couple times in high school track meets, and we knew that there had been a lot of people.
Well, we come in from Fenville to this big arena. It was so exciting, you know, I'd never been on a college court.
And the place was chock full, and I don't know, somewhere around 10,000 people in there. And these kids had never played in a crowd like that. And they were so nervous. I got them in the locker room as quick as I could, and we got dressed.
When we went onto the floor, it was a different experience than any of us had ever had because there were so many people there. That's still the most well-attended game in the history of that field house.
So we start the game, and we're just terrible.
In these big basketball arenas, the baskets are kind of freestanding. And, you know, in the small gyms, you got a wall behind it, you know. So they couldn't hardly hit the rim, including Rich.
We got off to a little bit of a shaky start, and part of it was they were using a brand new basketball, which is really what you don't do because it was very slippery. And so we were having a difficult time handling it.
I was 6 for 12 in the first half. I had 13 points. And they're booing, and people were sitting next to my parents, and they were saying, oh, this guy, you know, I came from St. Louis, Missouri to see this guy's not, and they're beating us by 18 points, I think.
You know, I think Rich had maybe 12 points, but he probably shot 25 times to get him in the first half. He turned the ball over. Yeah, we were awful.
In the third quarter, we got off to a slow start, and we got behind, I can't remember, maybe by 10 points, maybe 10 or 12 points. But halfway through the third quarter, we began to get back into the cycle of running, and that began to turn the tide.
It was like someone took my arm and started shooting it for me. Everything started going in. And the guys were playing, you know, rebound. We were working, and we came back.
Rich shot several very key shots, very long shots, and so that drew them out where we could start driving the ball to the basket and gradually whittled away at it.
I ended up having 24 in the last quarter, 36 for the second half, and we beat them 76-72.
Rich and I were talking one day, and he started going into all these stories in the past. And I was sitting and listening to these amazing stories of his athleticism and the anti-Semitism that he faced. And I thought, you know, you need to be on the wall in the synagogue. You know, we need to have a place for you. People should know all of this. We got a narrative of some of the things that Richie went through and a picture of him. And then Richie put together a compilation of his awards that we've got here. His mom kept a scrapbook of all his accomplishments, and I took some of the things out of the newspapers, articles, and put together his history. The one that touches me the most is this one on the bottom. This was a quote from the Kalamazoo Gazette. It says, "Michigan high school basketball will never be quite the same." It touches me really deeply. It's Richie Jordan played his final game.
Fenville is home. The people there, they've just treated me like I was very special. They named the town after me for a day. You know, how many kids at that age get that kind of recognition?
When you mention Fenville, you think of Richie Jordan. Richie was just a great player.
We all wanted to be remembered. We wanted to be the greatest team that ever came out of there. That's what we wanted.
Playing for your hometown is different than playing for your college team or your professional team, because the people in that small town, they know you. They know you. They're not cheering for the logo or memorabilia they can take home after the game. And they know you as a person. It was a wonderful experience, a wonderful time of life. You know, it's something you'll never get that kind of feeling back. It was a great time while it lasted. It was great.